Senator Dane, since his arrival in the Senate, he's been a strong fighter for the great American outdoors, which he enjoys so much in the beautiful state of Montana. He and I were talking not long ago about his next hunting trip. And I think one thing that unites us on both sides of the aisle and unites Americans really is this great American outdoors. I often say that Egypt has its pyramids and Italy has its art. England has its history, and we have the great American outdoors. And one of the best ideas that we have had in the United States government to support, protect, conserve the great American outdoors for the benefit of all Americans is the Land and Water Conservation Fund. It was first proposed in the 1960s by a commission headed by Lawrence Rockefeller. And it was a part of a commission that recommended a number of conservation issues, but the idea was very simple. It was to say when we have an environmental burden, we should have an environmental benefit. If we're going to drill for oil offshore, for example, that's an environmental burden. Let's take some of those revenues and use it for an environmental benefit. And so we've had all since that time, since the 1960s, money for the federal government and for state and local governments to conserve important parts of America. I know that in our state of Tennessee, we celebrated just in the last few weeks the acquisition of the Rocky Fort tract, about 10,000 acres in Unicoi and Greene counties, which was the #1 priority of the Forest Service. Great opportunities for Tennesseans to go hunting, to go hiking, to go riding horses. Those are the kind of things we like to do in our state. We don't have a lot of protected federal land, unlike many of the western states. And this was something the Land and Water Conservation Fund helped us do. In the mid-1980s, President Reagan asked me to chair something called the President's Commission on Americans Outdoors. I worked with Gil Grosvenor, the head of the National Geographic, Pat Noonan, the head of the Conservation Fund, and others. Our recommendation included full funding of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Continue to tie it to some of the proceeds from offshore oil drilling. In the energy bill in 7 or 8 years ago, when Senator Menachie was chairman of our Energy Committee, we actually made mandatory a little bit of funding from the offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico into the state side of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. But what we need to do, Mr. President, is to recognize the broad support for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Pass Senator Burr's bill, the senator from North Carolina who's fought tirelessly to permanently reauthorize the Land and Conservation Fund. And then we need to take the appropriate amount of our money, I think it's about $800 million for the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and gradually set aside those special areas of our country that deserve to be protected. So I'm here today to say that even though it expires today, I'm very hopeful that we can take some action very quickly to extend it, at least temporarily, and that soon we will have a chance to do what Senator Burr has proposed, Senator Daines has proposed, something I propose and have during my entire adult life. And I see the senator from Maine, and I know her interest in conservation and the outdoors. We need to get this done, and the American people expect us to do it, and I fully support it. I thank the President, and I yield the floor.
I want to thank the senator from Tennessee.